Last week, I told you about the Aboriginal Equity Partners. They formed the 31 First Nations and Métis groups that would be on the Northern Gateway pipeline construction route and support the project that Enbridge has been planning for over a decade. There are 45 Aboriginal communities on the construction pathway, which means that only 14 groups are in opposition to infrastructure that would include twin pipelines running from Bruderheim, Alberta to Kitimat, BC, that would deliver Alberta bitumen to a marine terminal for export. The construction of the pipeline was recommended for approval by the National Energy Board of Canada, or NEB, on December 19, 2013, with 209 conditions. And now the Federal Court of Approvals has overturned a decision made by the previous Conservative government to greenlight the project. 8 Aboriginal groups, 2 environmental groups, and 1 labor union were responsible for initiating the legal proceedings. And it's now been ruled that Aboriginal communities were not consulted sufficiently enough for the project to commence. It's important to note that of the 209 conditions put on the project, 142 of those had to do with Aboriginal engagement. That's about 70% of the conditions. I also mentioned in my previous story that the majority of Aboriginal groups directly affected by the pipeline support construction. So now we know that 8 communities had the ability to overturn this decision, and as a result, the NEB announced that they were suspending a joint request from Enbridge and Aboriginal Equity Partners to extend a sunset clause. This was also part of the 209 conditions imposed on the project that required the construction to commence by 2016. But the groups asked for a 3-year extension to get conditions met. The NEB have also suspended their review of filings in compliance to the 209 conditions, which means that the file has been sent back to the Liberals, who will make further decisions regarding the project. With 70% of the 209 conditions referring to Aboriginal engagement and 31 out of 45 directly affected communities being in support, that's quite a stretch. The decision to turn Northern Gateway over to the Liberals was purely political and doesn't represent the majority. We already know that the Liberals aren't supportive of the project, and for that reason, I think it's as good as done. The 209 conditions were hard enough to satisfy on their own, but with this added layer of getting through the feds, it will be next to impossible to get a shovel in the ground. What the Liberals don't realize is this just takes us another step away from our own energy independence, while other countries ramp up pipeline construction and exports. The United States is our only client for hydrocarbons, and without any other export options, our hands will soon be tied. With Canada accounting for 40% of US oil imports, that will account for billions in lost revenue. Under current circumstances, the US could be energy independent by 2020, which means that they won't need Canadian oil anymore. And Canada currently uses only 30% of its own supply, while exporting oil from the US and the Middle East. The situation in Alberta is dire as it is, but with no pipelines to export our resources, even to our own population, there's no market for our reserves. Even worse, we would continue to rely on rail transport, which is much less safe and can't handle the volumes that a pipeline can. We're already spending billions of dollars yearly to export a product we produce right here at home. To me, pipeline construction is a no-brainer, but it looks like the Liberals will have to learn this the hard way, through significant economic losses. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.